here, I had my babies and I had my first kiss. I've walked down Main Street in the cold morning mist. Go on now and say goodbye to our town, to our town. Good night.
Welcome back to Our Town, Bob Snedden, and we are talking, well, it's coming up on the dinner hour, but you may want to wait just a little while before you think about having dinner. Starting off, or my next guest right now is Mike Miller. He's the Public Works Director for the City of Florence. Mike, thanks for coming in.
Well, thank you, Bob.
You handle, your realm covers a lot of territory. Streets, parks,
Yes.
freshwater, drinking water,
Yes.
stormwater,
Stormwater. Yes.
airport, okay. Anything else?
See, water, wastewater, stormwater.
Oh, wastewater.
Parks. There you go.
That's-
That's it.
See, I threw you the softball.
There we
and you
go.
missed. You
There we go.
whiffed it. Wastewater, and that's what we're going to be speaking specifically about. Well, there are. Let's just talk about convenience items. There are a lot of convenience items on the market now that people can purchase to make their lives easier. We're, as a society, we're obsessed with cleanliness at times.
Absolutely.
There are some people who are not as obsessed as maybe they could be. And I'm one of those, that, according to my wife. But taking care of your personal hygiene is important, and convenience is important for a lot of people. So there are a lot of things that are being marketed specifically for their convenience because they're flushable.
Yes.
Now, does flushable mean treatable?
No, and sometimes flushable means that they're not exactly flushable. It comes down to being able to break apart in the sewer systems, and what we're finding is across the nation, and it's a nationwide problem, that flushable or disposable wipes specifically do not break down the system and actually foul either in pumps or at the headworks on our screens, which requires manpower and effort to remove.
So basically, the convenience items. Let's run through the list. I mean, there are flushable personal hygiene wipes, which are like diaper wipes for
Yes.
the baby. And those have been on the market for a while. But most people, if they've been using them as diaper wipes, they'll use them and then tuck them in the diaper and dispose of it in the solid waste. But their personal hygiene wipes. There are other things that are being marketed as flushable too. Even disposable flushable diapers, right?
That is correct. Yes, and actually, that was a interesting conversation with the City of Vancouver, where somebody actually called up and said, "Hey, we just bought these disposable diapers. Are they really flushable as advertised?" And the folks in the City of Vancouver, Washington, looked at that and actually went out and field tested it, and no, they are not. They do not fall apart within the sewer system by the time it gets.
I would seem like the two, the main intended purpose and the method of disposal would be mutually exclusive, because while it's on the child, you want it to hold together.
Exactly.
And collect fluids and hold solids and not deteriorate. But then there's something magical when you flush it down the toilet; it's just going to dissolve. I mean,
it's an oxymoron. Yes,
it is. Yeah. There's actual scoopable cat litter. They say you can flush.
There is, and it does not. You can flush it, but it gets hung up in the sewer system.
Yeah.
More importantly, it's the customer's sewer service that gets to the main where the blockage can happen, and then they get plugged up and they have a little backup into their home.
Right, and that's where a lot of the problems can occur. And
Yes.
there's a dividing line as to where it's who's going to pay the bill.
Well,
for the
typically, if
repair.
it's in the service line, it's the property owner's responsibility.
Yeah, and the service line goes from the house to where it hits the main under the street, right?
That's correct.
And just out of curiosity, if somebody had to dig up right at that connection, you dig up a paved street and get down there and repair something like that, what does it cost to cut pavement and dig it out and then patch it?
It's expensive. You're looking at probably $3, $4, up to $5,000
Just for that part of it.
just for that.
And that's not including the plumber that's going to crawl in the hole and take the pipe apart and clear it out and put it
That's
back
correct.
together. Yeah. All right. Mike Miller's Public Works Director for the City of Florence. Now, there's a lot of items that say they're flushable. There are a lot of items that aren't flushable, but people have a tendency to do. And one of them, I'm looking at the list here, and that's a Kleenex.
Yes, facial. So facial
Yeah.
tissues do not break apart. They're heavier.
Right.
They have a lot of times they have aloe in them, and so they do not break apart in the sewer system like toilet paper would.
And I'll have to admit, that's the way I've disposed of them because, they're usually a biohazard. You blow your nose into them and they've got germs in them. If the kids have done it or whatever, it's just drop in the toilet and it's gone. But I've never really thought about that before.
Yeah, they do hang up. Yes.
Yeah. They're not as indestructible as the wipes, I would imagine.
That's correct.
Yeah. There are other things that traditionally, and I'm looking at a few of the pictures, and I see some of them that people in my household have been guilty of from time to time. I mean, like Q-tip swabs,
Q-tips, dental floss.
dental floss.
Yes.
Oh, I would imagine that would not be flushable,
It's it's not, but people treat the toilet as a
Yeah.
trash can.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's in some of the promotion for this segment. I talked about that water-filled trash can in your
That's
bathroom.
Exactly what it can
And
be.
that's one way that a lot of people talk about. Now, grease and fat, cooking grease,
Yeah. So we refer to that as fog, fats, oils, and greases.
Oh, okay.
And that does cause problems in the sewer system because the fats, oils, and greases will congeal, become hardened over time. Typically, when you pour it down the sink, especially in a kitchen type environment, it's warm, it's liquefied, pours very easily down the sink. But as it gets into the sewer system, it cools, and then it will collect on the sides of the pipes. Over time, enough of that will collect and will actually clog off a line.
So, I mean, it's just like hardening of the arteries.
Yes.
In our heart and our arteries, in our circulatory system, that fat does the very same thing in the sewer system. It can build up and
It can.
Yeah.
It can.
And quite often, it may be it may be liquid, but it cools rather quickly.
It does, and that's when it can congeal and combine with whether it's flushable wipes, baby wipes, whatever else is in the sewer system, and it will congeal and form a mass.
All right. So these are things. There's one other thing that I want to say for a little bit later. I'll just mention it right now, and that's prescription drugs. But we'll save that for later. They don't necessarily cause the clog, but they can cause problems on down the line in the water. So what happens if somebody flushes consistently 2 or 3 of these wipes every day? Most of them will get through the service line okay, right?
Yes, but they can, and they often end up doing. We have a lot of pump stations in this community. We have 38 pump stations, and for a community of this size, that's a lot of pump stations. And typically, what they do, they end up at the pump station, and they get caught up in the impellers, and so the pumps seize up. We have redundancy, but over time, we can actually have multiple failures, and there's a slight chance of a sewer surcharge, meaning that the sewer will actually come out of the station and onto the ground. And
You call that a surcharge?
that's a surcharge,
okay.
yes.
Well, I guess, yeah.
Overflow, surcharge.
Overflow. All right. I think of a surcharge as I'm going to charge you an extra $5 a month because you keep flushing those wipes.
There we go.
Yeah. So they'll get hung up. And now the way wastewater works, it's basically gravity.
Basically,
And we've all played with water when we were kids. I'm still a kid. I still do it when I go to the beach. I'll dig but something gets hung up, that becomes a choke point and allows something else to get caught. So all you need is one of those things to get caught, or even just a shred of it.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it will build up.
It will build up, and we can have blockages, or
And you get some fat added to it.
and you get
Yeah. And then you get another one.
and another one,
And another one. And you wind up with, it looks like somebody's huge load of dirty laundry.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, how do you know when you have a clog? Imagine it's probably pretty simple, isn't it?
It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
So an individual in their house would know because their system isn't draining anymore.
Yeah, so all of a sudden, there's something really nasty coming out of the bathtub.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In the main sewer system, especially with our pump stations, we know when our levels are too high in the pump stations. We get called out, and we know that we need to deal with the individual pumps. That's typically how we know. And then, of course, we do routine maintenance. We have to go and clean the screens at the headworks, and that's where we find the
Yeah.
material too.
Now, these items that we're talking about, by the way, Mike Miller is the Public Works Director of the City of Florence, and we're talking about something that's probably not too palatable as we're coming into the dinner hour, but it is something that costs municipalities hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars around the country because of the effects of them. These are convenience items or flushables. These are commonly called what, non-woven
Yes, non-woven fabrics.
fabrics. And they're,
And there's actually an association for non-woven fabrics.
right.
Which is pretty interesting because they claim, of course, that their products are completely flushable, do not cause problems, and have done their own studies. There was a study done in Southern California where that sewer district said, hey, we have a problem. So both the sewer district and the Association of Non-Woven Fabrics went in and did a study, and it was really interesting because what they found was 70% of the material that was hanging up was the quote-unquote disposable or flushable wipes, whereas before the industry was claiming it was paper towels, that people were washing their hands, using paper towels, throwing them in the toilet,
Right.
and flushing them. It's not the case. That was only 1% of the items that were found.
For paper towels.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but 70% was the flushable wipes.
Flushable wipes. City of Vancouver recently, in the past few years, had a huge problem, didn't they?
Yes, and they've been addressing it. So over the last 5 years, they've spent $1.5 million in upgrades to their pump stations to handle this material. It's very costly when you start dealing with the larger size pumps.
Yeah.
In comparison, the City of Florence spends $25,000 on an annual basis of upgrading our pump stations, plus another $25,000 in what we refer to as sewer maintenance. These are just strictly dollars to buy equipment or buy material.
Mhm.
Doesn't include labor
Right.
or our equipment of being out and dealing with it.
So you can replace the pump and put pumps in that can handle these things better, but they're still not foolproof, are they?
No, they're not. And then over time, they do wear. So there are different pumps and different manufacturers. One is called a chopper pump. Imagine that's exactly what it does.
Mhm.
It has knives on it and it chops up the material. It will actually take blue jeans. We've seen it happen where somebody has flushed blue jeans down the toilet, gotten into the sewer system, but these pumps will chew them up and spit them out, and not a problem. But over time, the cutting edges wear, and they're very costly to change those cutting heads and replace those motors and pumps.
And the things that sewer systems and waste treatment facilities were designed for are, without being too graphic, are, the toilet paper is, I saw a demonstration online where they put one of these wipes in a beaker with a spinning blade. It wasn't a cutter blade or anything,
No,
just
it's
spinning
just-
water.
yes.
They dropped a couple squares of toilet paper in one and one of these wipes in the other, and the wipe just went around and around in circles, but the toilet paper actually breaks up. The other things that are intended to go in there are usually soft and pliable and break up and soluble and that sort of stuff.
It's what the sewer system's meant to take.
Right.
Yes.
It's when you start adding other things that'll hang up and catch and that are solid that really cause problems. So,
Right.
has it been a problem in Florence, Mike?
We've had some issues, not a large amount. We're really trying to get the word out, do public education and outreach, so it doesn't become a problem. But we do see these type of things. We see lots of things. Basically, if you flush it, we do see it eventually in
Yeah.
the sewer system. So But the idea is to get ahead of the curve, let people know that these are an issue, that really they need to be going into the solid waste system and not into the toilet.
Right. And there are costs that you can see, as a result of something like this. If there's a clog, you can see that cost. Okay, we got to dispatch a crew, we got to dig up the street, we got to do this, we got to replace a pump. There are also other costs down the line as well, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, for one thing, if you have a crew working on repairing something, they're not doing preventative maintenance on something else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And plus, that's nasty stuff in those pipes. And anytime you open up a pipe and you have somebody have to get in there or reach in there, you're exposing them to
Yes.
pretty nasty stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. By the way, when you came in, I was joking, and you stuck out your hand to shake my hand, and I said, "Wait a minute, have you been to the waste treatment plant yet?" You said,
Nope, it was clean today,
yeah,
so yes.
First Wednesday of the month is always clean day. So, yeah. I want to switch real quick because we're about out of time. Mike Miller is the Public Works Director of City of Florence. Talking about okay, you get to say this. What is okay to flush?
It's poo, pee, paper.
Poo,
And-
pee, and paper. Okay.
And that's toilet paper.
Toilet paper, yeah. I was going to make you say it. Real quick, I want to jump back to the prescription drugs that I mentioned briefly. Those should not be dumped into the toilet. I mean, that used to be the common way. If you had an expired prescription or something left over, they would say, "Oh, just flush it down the toilet."
Oh, absolutely.
But we're finding there's some environmental
A
concerns.
lot of environmental concerns. We do discharge to the river, so traditional treatment does not remove pharmaceuticals from the waste stream.
Yeah.
So we don't have a way of removing it. So if it's flushed down the system, those ingredients in those prescription drugs do find their way out into the river.
And so we find that we have fish in the lower Sisal River that have very low blood pressure and have very low blood sugar.
I'm going to say something else, but I'm not going
Yeah,
to.
okay, yeah. Well, no. So the proper way to dispose of something like that, police department has a...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just want to touch interesting story. A gentleman that's been in the industry for a long time. His mother passed away, and this is Midwest. And so he came home, and his garage was, because he remembers the garage being wall to wall with shelves and stuff, and it was with all these different pesticides and oils and everything and anything that his dad had used for 50, 60 years was in this garage.
Mm-hmm.
And when he came home, it was gone. It was empty. He goes, "Oh, what happened? Where's all this stuff?" And they said, "Well, the cans are out back. They're all empty." "Well, where did the material go?" "Well, it went down the sewer system."
Oh. And this was somebody that was in your
this-
profession. So-
Exactly. And then he went in the house, and like I said, the mother had passed away, and she kept every prescription bottle as can be imagined. And in her closet, she had a little table that had every prescription bottle, whether it was had one pill in it or it was 3/4 full. She had everything. And he looked over, and in the trash can were all these empty vials of pill containers. And he goes, "Oh, what did you guys do?" "We flushed them down the system." And so he knew the operators at the local wastewater plant, and he did not want to call them and say, "Hey, did you guys have a problem?" because that would have caused a major problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he could commiserate
He could-
or sympathize with them. For sure.
Exactly.
All right.
It does happen.
Basically, the bottom line is it's a toilet, not a trash can.
Absolutely.
And watch what you flush and put it in the solid waste stream. Mike Miller, thank you very much for coming in.
Well, thank you.
Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
I did.
All right. I had to get that out of the way. I should have asked you when we first greeted you. This is our town.